For English, you guys have the chance to start exploring trench warfare. So you already got exposed to it when you were doing the over-the-top war simulation from World War One. You got a chance to see what it would be like as far as physical conditions, as far as the type of food they had to eat, where they were sleeping, what they had to do each day. It was not great. They also had it where the mental and emotional toll that it would take when they're losing other people in the war, as far as their friends, the people that they're fighting alongside. They're also having to take human life. They're having to kill other people. And sometimes the other people that they're killing are even younger than them or the exact same age. Like, that would have been hard. And so you got a chance to get a feel for what they would have experienced, the type of decisions that they would have had to make, and what it would have been like to be involved in trench warfare from World War One. What you're going to do now is for the next about 2 weeks roughly, we're going to put aside towards exploring trench warfare just a little bit more. And I like this project because it focuses on having to research. And then you're also learning how to do a bibliography. You're also going to have it where you get a chance to also build a 3D model of like a trench warfare setup. And I'll show you some ideas of what that could look like. So first of all, let me just share my screen and I will show you what you're going to do. So first of all, this is going to be on Google Classroom, and it's showing you, first of all, getting into the research of it. So just keep a heads up here that for the next probably about 3 classes, I am for sure going to put towards you guys having it where you are just doing some research, organizing your notes, and starting to write a research paper. Now, what will happen is you need to start with a good inquiry question. Now, if you are going more towards close-ended questions such as yes, no, or which one's your favorite, things like that, those are weaker questions. Even when you get into like the who, when, what, where, those are not bad questions, and those are needed to be able to help explain your research. But they're kind of in the middle here. They're not really strong questions, but they're good questions though. So kind of like, what happened in trench warfare, who was involved, who was allowed to fight in World War One, where were they fighting, when was this happening? So all those different types of things are good questions, but they are not really strong ones. The strong ones are open-ended. They could have more than one answer. They might also have it where when you are getting that answer, it might lead you to more questions down the line. So things like, how did this happen? So how did they, let's see here, it could be, how were they chosen for where to go for, like as far as what division that they would fight in the war. It could also be like, let's say, the why did World War One happen in the first place? Or why did this group win on this day, whatever it might be? Or what if the war had ended differently? What if? What would have happened to the world as we know it now if there had been a different result with World War One? So those type of questions really get you thinking. They have it where they dig deeper into just the nitty-gritty details of the area that you're looking into. So just to give some examples here, and you'll get a chance to look at this, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but with these questions here, are you a teacher? What classes have you taught? Why did you want to become a teacher? If you take a look at that, you should be able to figure out pretty quickly which ones are more like weaker, closed questions where there's really only one answer for it. And then you can see also if there's any questions that are more open-ended, and that could be a variety of responses to that particular question, and it would be considered to be a stronger question. So if you're taking a look, you would see that these first two, these ones are going to be really just simple, really only one answer to those questions. So they're closed-ended, they're weaker questions. Again, good questions, just that they're not open-ended. They don't really dig too much deeper into, let's say why she became a teacher. Whereas this one really gets into the why. And so that is one where only this teacher here, only she could answer that, because she's the only one who knows why she became a teacher. And so this one will be getting into an open-ended, stronger question. You need to be getting questions along those lines. So make sure that your questions have the possibility of having more than one right answer, that you also are able to get evidence to support your answers. Don't just give me all your opinions and that's it. You need to have it where you're looking into this. This is a research project, and this is an important skill for you to be able to learn in English, is how to be able to research different items. And what will happen, again, also obviously weak questions based on personal opinion alone. You're only looking for a certain answer, right or wrong, that type of idea. You'll obviously see the different examples here. Now, we have some questions here. You can even just think about this. If it is a strong or a weak question. So if it's a strong question, that'd be like the idea of giving it a thumbs up. Weak question, giving it a thumb down. How do you deal with stress in your life? So if you're looking at that one, you see it starts with how. And there's not only one right answer to this one. So this one, you're getting into a strong question. Who built the Eiffel Tower? There's only one answer. So then that is going to be a weaker question. Why is the sky blue? Well, you have why there. So you're actually digging deeper into this. So that means it's going to be a stronger question. What you need to do today, this is your assignment for today. You need to come up with an interesting, strong research question that you're going to look into. And it should be starting with one of, just gotta keep scrolling up. Oh, fantastic. My computer's not, here we go. It'll get there. All right, so it should be starting with one of these. So that's what you should really be focusing on for your main question that you're going to be asking in regards to trench warfare. So trench is where they were literally, they had those trenches dug out. You think of like no man's land in World War I, and that was where they had Germans on one side, they had like the Canadians on the other side, and they are fighting against each other. So shooting, whether it's machine gun or their own rifles, but they were in the trenches as yeah, kind of like their protection, I guess you'd say. So what you'll do is you're going to have it where you're going to use the following guide to be able to help you with your research. But start with your question first of all. Make sure it's a good, a strong question, one that's open-ended that you can kind of get several different details in there. Then dealing with your sources. So with sources, we are going to be looking into primary and secondary sources. So a primary source are ones that are created during the time period that you're studying. So it's happening, yeah, all those were produced in the moment. So that could be a diary from a soldier that was right there in the trenches during World War I. It could also be a newspaper article that happened at that time. It could be a speech that maybe a prime minister gave about what was happening in the war. It could be photographs, letters that were sent home to loved ones. All of those are primary sources because they came from the people who were directly involved in whatever it is that you are investigating. Whereas a secondary source, that is where you have like a documentary. So this is produced after the fact. They're having it where maybe they are looking at some of the letters and the diaries and the newspaper articles, and then they create something like a documentary. Or it could be a textbook that has all this information in it. It could be different scholarly articles. It could be even an encyclopedia. And so all those different things get put together after the fact. And they might collect some of these different primary sources, but they are, so like a documentary, they could show photographs of what happened, but a documentary is still going to be a secondary source. The pictures that they have in their documentary would be considered to be a primary source, but the documentary itself is a secondary source because it was created after whatever event or time period that you're looking at, it was created after the fact. So it is a secondary source. So here, if you're to look here, you'll be trying to figure out if it is a primary or a secondary source. So looking here, you see a veterinarian's kit. It was used to treat the horses during the First World War. And so that had syringes, thermometers, medicinal drugs. Excuse me. Bless me. And horseshoes. And so they were all needed to be able to treat injured or sick horses on the battlefront here. So with that one, think about it. Is that going to be a primary or a secondary source? And hopefully you would have said that that would be a primary source because that was used during that time period. So it was discovered after the fact, but it was used during the time of the First World War. So that would be a primary source. And then this one here is a hand-drawn map that shows some of the hundreds of trenches that were all across Vimy Ridge. Now, obviously they're hand-drawn, but it helped the soldiers to figure out where to go, especially in the chaos of battle, where was safe, where it wasn't safe. And what do you think that would be? Primary or secondary? And hopefully you said it was a primary source because this was created during the time that everything was happening there. And then this one is a Canadian War Memorial. It's the National War Memorial known as the Response. And so that has it where it just it symbolizes the sacrifice of all the Canadian armed forces that served in that time of the war. This one, would this be primary or secondary? Now, since it was created after World War I, I'm hoping that you mentioned that it was a secondary source that was created after the fact. So that is what you're going to be doing. We'll take a look at an annotated bibliography down the line. But for now, what will happen is in your, I think I'm on the wrong part here. Okay, so I'm going to go here to your handout. This is what you do today. You're going to do the brainstorming. I want you to do 10 things that you know about World War I and trench warfare. You can base your ideas on what you already learned in that over-the-top war simulation story that you did. You could base your ideas from that because you got a chance to learn a fair bit about trench warfare just from that story. You can even redo the game if you want to. You might also have read some other stories, or you might have watched some documentaries or movies that were about World War I, and so you could have it where you put anything that you already know into this column here. And then this part right here is things that you're wondering or curious about on the topic of trench warfare or World War I. And so you can write down at least 10 things on this side. So 10 here, 10 here. Then going on to the next page, this is where you're choosing your question. Then you'll have it where you put your question here, and then just kind of look at the checkbox afterwards. Is it open-ended? Could it have more than one right answer? Do you need, is it an answer that is going to be able to be supported by evidence? And then does it need explanation and reasons or ideas? And then does it also lead to further questions? If you can check off all of them, then I would say that is going to be a strong question for you to look into for your research project. Moving on to the next one here. This gives you some different sources. So this is what you're going to look at. They have listed some primary sources. So if you even just go here, oh, that did not work out well. If you have it where you copy it and then you paste it into a new tab, you'll be able to see what they have. So you would copy it, you would open up a new tab and then paste it in there. You'll be able to look there, and this has a few different primary sources that you can look at to try to research your research question. And then we have a couple reliable secondary sources as well. Now, just to keep in mind, Wikipedia, you could look at it as a starting point, but that is not going to be included in your bibliography, and that is not where you should be getting the bulk of your information. So you should always have it where anything that's in your research paper, it should always have it where you have found it first, either in a primary or a secondary source. If, let's say, you found something on Historica Canada, but it wasn't quite making sense to you, sure, go ahead and look it up on Wikipedia, but that is not going to be something where you get your the bulk of your information from. That's only something that you should be using if you need to double check something, or if you need to have it explained a little bit better to you. But other than that, you are not using it for your research project. So this is going to be challenging you a little bit, but I think it would be a good experience. So these are primary sources to look at. These are some secondary sources to look at. And what you can start doing it is having where you keep track of your notes. So what I'll do is I'll have it where I talk about your annotated bibliography later on. But for right now, just start to keep track of which sources you've been using. And you can have it where you mention also how is it helpful in your question. So you can start filling this in. You don't have to have it where you fill everything in yet, but definitely like the website link here. You can tell me what is the title of the organization. So let's say it could be the Canadian War Museum, and then have it where it tells me how is it answering your question. So start there. I'll give you more information later on. Now obviously it only has one primary, one secondary source page here. If you want to be able to get more of these pages, then what you're gonna do is click on that. You're gonna have it where you right click and have it where you duplicate the slide. That will give you more of the exact same slide, so you can do that a few times. That way you have lots of pages that have room for you to put down your notes for a primary source as well as for a secondary source. Hoping that makes sense. Just take today on having it where you focus on starting to go through the PowerPoint presentation, or I guess it's technically a PDF. Look through that. Have it where you fill in, I'm going to go back up here, fill in your T-chart, 10 items on both sides. Come up with your inquiry question, make sure it's a strong one, and then start looking into some research and have it where you start having it where you record what you were looking at and how was it helpful in giving you answers for your question. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll also write just the basics of what I'm expecting from you, and you can feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Have a great rest of the day.